In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some additional NHL free agent and trade rumors concerning teams like Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Also want to take a look at the future of Dustin Byfuglien, and we also have some few more signings to discuss as well. We'll jump into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news and rumors and signings to look at here today. So let's dive in and get started first off with the signings that have taken place here over the last 24 to 48 hours. Both of these signings we're going to discuss concern the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now they started by signing goaltender Jonas Korpisalo to a 2-year extension valued at $2.8 million. Now, we had discussed before in a prior video about the Columbus Blue Jackets goaltending situation. Obviously, it was an uncertain time, I guess to say the least, heading into the current season with Sergei Bobrovsky departing by free agency. A lot of uncertainty who and how that was going to go with Korpisalo basically taking over the starting role. Would a guy like Elvis Merzlikins be able to step in? I mean, he was a goaltender looked upon with a lot of potential, and they certainly got the job done, and I think exceeded expectations for what they were going to be able to accomplish for the current season. Of course, as the season is currently on pause, we're going to have to wait and see if they're going to get any shot to performing in the playoffs or anything at a later time. But for right now, Korpisalo has certainly earned himself an extension. It's a short-term deal, not a lot of money. It's pretty low risk on both sides. Of course, Merzlikins is also a pending restricted free agent. I had suggested before that maybe they would consider moving one of the two just so they wouldn't be in a position like some other teams that we're going to talk about today as well. Maybe losing a goaltender in the expansion draft to Seattle, which is not all that far away, but they don't have to make a rush decision on that. They still have another season to get through before they're going to be running into that. So signing even a guy like Merzlikins to another 1 or 2 year contract very well might be taking place too, especially if you can have both your goaltenders for the kind of contracts like that. It's certainly worth your while. And if Korpisalo is getting 2.8 and he's more established than Merzlikins is, then I would imagine he would get a little bit less. Maybe you sign him around $1.5-2 million on a 1-2 year deal as well. Go with a 1A 1B situation. Certainly not a bad problem to have. They also have some other interesting goalie prospects in their system. So if they did end up losing one in the expansion draft, it might not be the worst thing. So I guess we'll see what happens here with Columbus, but certainly a pretty good signing in the contract there for Korpisalo. The Blue Jackets are also bringing back a former NHLer who's been playing in the KHL, and that's Mikhail Grigorenko, who originally broke in with the Buffalo Sabres, also played a few years with the Colorado Avalanche, but has spent the past 3 years playing over in the KHL and has had some reasonable amount of success over there. He's returning to the returns to the Blue Jackets on a 1-year deal at $1.2 million. Elliot Friedman had reported he believes, according to his sources at least, that Grigorenko had bigger money opportunities to remain in the KHL, some as many as twice as much as what he'll be earning in the NHL, but he really wanted that opportunity to return and carve out a more successful career than he did the first time around. So I guess we will see. Grigorenko is a player who has a lot of talent, but has never really put everything together. I know when he was coming into the NHL after being drafted when he played in junior, he's one of those guys who seemed to have a lot of talent, a lot of skill, but just never really seemed to put it to full use, and some kind of question a little bit on his work ethic and heart and just the desire to be better, that some guys just have it, and other guys just don't care enough to really take it to the next level. And I know there's been some question marks around him in that regard. So I guess we'll see if the second time around works out better for Grigorenko and if he can earn another contract and remain beyond the upcoming 2020-21 NHL season. Now, as I mentioned, I also have some NHL free agent and trade rumors to take a look at. I want to kick things off with the Pittsburgh Penguins. There was another article referencing here in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette talking about their goaltending situation, and that's a situation we've touched on before, and I just wanted to see another interesting take on this. Obviously, Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry are both in situations like the guys in Columbus where they're going to be needing new contracts, and it's debatable on what they do. We saw the Penguins go through a bit of a similar situation before when Vegas was entering the league. Of course, they had Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray. Murray had an opportunity to really start to take over the role, so they let Fleury be exposed rather than trade him. Obviously, it was a big blow to the team, but Fleury's gone on to have a ton of success with Vegas, and I guess they say the rest is history. But where we're going to have a 2.0 version of this in Pittsburgh, lose another goaltender to the next expansion team in Seattle, is certainly debatable. Obviously, Matt Murray's had some injury and consistency issues, and I think it's fair to say that Tristan Jarry was probably the better goalie for a bigger part of the time for the current season that's on pause, and I guess we'll see maybe if we get that chance for NHL playoffs, maybe we'll have a little bit more of a clear-cut answer on this, depending on which goalie performs better or however that may play out. But for right now, there's certainly a lot of debate on whether or not they cut bait from Matt Murray and move on to Tristan Jarry rather than lose one of them to Seattle. And of course, Murray's going to be looking for a bigger time contract. He's got a much bigger body of work. He's got a couple Stanley Cups to his name. I'm sure he's going to be looking for more term and more money. And do they want to spend that kind of money on him when they have a guy like Jarry who they might be able to go with a little bit cheaper and get the same or if not better results? And Matt Murray, if he were traded, could certainly bring a pretty decent return to a team like the Penguins, especially if they were to maybe go after more of like future assets, for example, considering that with the salary cap where it is, they might not want another big time contract returning. Otherwise, they would give that money to Murray and move on anyhow. So it might be a good opportunity for them to restock the cupboards in Pittsburgh, and it might be a new opportunity to not lose a goaltender in the upcoming expansion draft if they go down that road. But this article references the fact that he believes, at least on a short-term basis, that they can keep both goaltenders. And I'm not going to totally disagree with that take here. I think the writer of this article basically suggests that, at least on a short-term basis, it's feasible, and it certainly would be, depending on what they will take for contracts. But my concern is that Murray may not want a short-term deal. He might want the bigger term, bigger money, more security, that he's earned that right. And you know what? He has an argument there that he certainly has. But at the same time, if you can get him on short-term deals, maybe that's the better way to go. But I just don't know that Murray's going to end up agreeing to that. But on a short-term basis, they could go another year. They don't have to make a move just yet. They could wait it out and see closer to the time of the expansion draft before they make a trade. But I guess let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. If you're the Penguins, do you make a move when we finally hit the offseason here and maybe move towards the new era of Tristan Jarry as your starting goaltender? Or do you hold on to Murray a little bit longer, try to sign him, but hopefully you can get him on a reasonable deal and then obviously make a move down the road or a decision down the road on who's going to be your guy moving forward? Now, speaking of goaltenders, I want to jump over next to the Calgary Flames. There's been a recent interview with Flames goaltender Cam Talbot. Of course, he's a pending UFA. He signed with the Flames on a one-year deal where he was looking to kind of reprove himself and bounce back and show that he could still play at the NHL and earn himself more opportunity. And it sounds like he might be willing to move on to make that happen. And clearly, I think the Flames are more interested in going with David Rittich as the starter, at least for the next little while. And Talbot sounds to me that, based on this interview with NHL.com, that he would like more of a starting opportunity. Now, I'm not completely convinced right now he's going to get that, so that very well could change the outcome of where he ends up playing next year. To me, Calgary is still a good spot for him because as much as Rittich has been a good goalie, I really like his game. I'm not sure that he's ready to be that full starter without that veteran backup that you can rely on to take over from time to time that he might need. So obviously having like a 1A, 1B situation would be good for the Flames, in my opinion, if they can get Talbot on I guess depending on the price tag, that's going to play a role as well. If he's going to be demanding too much based on his better play, maybe you have to go in a new direction. But for me, if I'm the Flames, I probably like the idea that Talbot played well. I'd be open to keeping him around as insurance for Rittich on a short-term basis. The Flames don't have the very deep prospect pool of goaltenders in their system, so it might be something that they kind of look to do for the short-term basis here. But Talbot sounds like he's looking for a starting opportunity, and I'm just not sure there's going to be one out there, although I do think it's going to be one of the busier years for goaltenders, possibly changing teams and moving around once we finally get the offseason. So my question to you is, do you see Cam Talbot getting a starting job anywhere in the NHL? And where do you see him signing once we finally hit the offseason? And I also want to reference an article talking about the Montreal Canadiens from the Montreal Gazette, where they reference the fact that they feel Marc Bergevin's top priorities once we get to the offseason is the guys like Brendan Gallagher, Thomas Tatar, and Philip Deneau, who are all going to be eligible for contract extensions, that should be his top priority in moving forward to get them all locked up to longer-term deals. And I'm kind of not really sure that really should be his top priority. Now, to a degree, I would be open if I was Bergevin to keeping all three around. I do think out of the three that Gallagher's probably earned the most term because he's been there the longest. He's also, one of the more productive ones out of the bunch. I mean, Phil Deneau really serves a solid role. I'd be open to keeping him around too, but maybe not quite as much term as Gallagher. And when it comes to Thomas Tatar, I think he's been a terrific fit there, and I think he's played well with guys like Gallagher at times, and it certainly would be a wise move to keep him, but I would probably consider moving him as well, just because when the next season rolls around, he will be 30 years old, which is at a point when you typically do see a bit of a decline. line, if they give him a 4 or 5 year contract, they could be in a similar situation that other teams have been with players of this caliber at this age, that in a not too distant future, they very well might be regretting giving those kind of commitments on dollars and term if the production happens to drop off. They're already in a situation where they have Jonathan Drouin, who's not performing up to par, and he has got a not looking so good contract right now either. Obviously, that's going to be tough to move given how he played last year and been injured and all that. So really hard to say. Personally, I think Montreal's biggest needs is, first of all, they need a backup goaltender who can spell Carey Price and play a little bit more. I'm not sure that Caden Primo really is 100% ready for that as of yet. I would be open to getting another backup goalie in, if even maybe on no more than a 2-year deal, to give Primo some more time to really play a solid starting role at the minors. Just give him a little bit more seasoning. You don't want to rush goalies like that if you can help it, but maybe he could be like Carter Hart and be ready at a young age. Hard to say, but I just want to have that insurance there for a little longer, to have that role kind of solidified. Keith Kincaid didn't get it done this year. They need to look elsewhere for next year, and they could also use a little bit more of a clear-cut path on the future forward Max Domi. He's a pending RFA. He could be one of the bigger contracts on the team if he's retained. There's been some talk that Bergevin could look to trade him. I'm not really sure that he's going to do that. I think more than likely he will sign him. He's been asked before if he thought it'd be any challenges in doing so. He said no, but I would not expect him to say anything different anyway. And really, Domi has played, for the most part, pretty well with that team. I think he likely does stick around and sign a contract, but I think it's going to be one that Bergevin's going to want to be awfully careful with, given the fact of how that Drouin deal went. He's not going to want to have Domi end up in a similar predicament and have two forwards that are relatively young on fairly good money deals not performing. So he's going to have to be careful there. But to me, determining the future of Domi, getting a backup goaltender, and maybe getting a little bit more help on the blue line would be my biggest priorities if I'm Bergevin. There's other three who are going to be pending UFAs after another year. I'd almost be willing to put some of that on the back burner and see, because obviously right now there's so much uncertainty about the salary cap, and a lot of that's going to be determined by how that plays out as well, that I would not be rushing into any conversations just yet, which is a pretty well, the general feeling from around the league. But once we get to a time that there's going to be an off season and it's official, then we should have a little bit more clarity on how the cap is going to work. But for right now, those would be my most addressing needs for Montreal moving into the off season here. And I also want to address the future of Dustin Byfuglien. Of course, in our last video, we talked about the fact that he and the Jets had finally come to a termination agreement, and he's finally a free man. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. Contract with the Jets have been terminated, and I've seen numerous articles and people talking online about Montreal and Toronto being the most likely destinations for Big Buff to land should he return to the NHL. And I'm just not really sure that he's going to be returning at all. I mean, to a degree, if a team like Montreal or Toronto or really many others around the NHL could get Byfuglien in game shape, be healthy, and to get a short-term contract for 1 or 2 years at a decent cap hit, I would take it any day of the week. He's a very unique player, one of the most unique players we've seen in the NHL in the last quite a number of years. He mostly played defense, but could play forward at times when he first was in the league. He's a huge beast out there. He can be a big factor when he's on your team. We've seen it happen before when he was with the Jets, when he was with the Hawks before. He's a real unique player that I would gladly sign for the right price. I just don't know that he's going to be going anywhere. So we've seen numerous reports indicating that basically he sat down with GM Kevin Cheveldayoff early before the season started, right before, I think it was the night before training camp, told him he just didn't think he had it in him to play anymore. Obviously, there seemed to be some issues regarding that injured ankle, but we're not really sure how deep that went. It seems like he left on pretty good terms, that he wasn't really blaming them. I don't know. There's certainly stuff we don't know that's gone on behind the scenes here with this situation, but it seems like it doesn't really seem to be anything personal against him and the Jets. They kind of made it clear that it's... based on reports I've read, it seems as though that it's really an amicable separation, even though Winnipeg would rather have him play. I just don't see him going anywhere. I've seen reports as well from numerous NHL teammates or former teammates of his say that they would be shocked if he returned and played anywhere else either. So personally, I know there's teams out there. I see lots of reports them linking him to the Habs and Leafs. I'm just not sure Buff is going to play anywhere. If you think about it, by the time he can sign, which can't be until the following season. So if the NHL is able to resume their regular season, Dustin Byfuglien will not be eligible to sign a contract and play. So they got to get through whatever they're going to do for the current year that's on pause, and he wouldn't be eligible for next year. It could end up being close to 2 years maybe, depending on when they can get a return, or a year and a half, or whatever it is, before Buff can even get into a contract. And you think about how long it's been for him to be off and laid off, and such a big man like that. Like, I'm just not sure that it's really feasible for him to return, and I don't know if the desire is there as well. So we're certainly not going to link him here to any teams, and I would be very cautiously optimistic if you're reading any reports out there linking him to one of the teams that you'd like to see him go to, that he would ever even return and play. I'd love to see it happen. I just don't have a lot of optimism that it's going to. So let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments, and we can continue discussing further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And again, thank you to all of our channel membership holders. I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.